right, so what I'm going to go through is your copper texture project. And for this project, we are going to be kind of going through each step pretty quickly just to give you an overview of what we're doing. So the first thing, you need to come up with a plan, researching 5 different textures from real life. Then you're going to make 2 different designs. Now, the designs that you make according to the directions, they need to be 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches because that is going to be the size of your final copper piece. So I want those to be exactly the same size. As you design those, you need at least 5 different spaces or areas that separate. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I actually have more, 6. Down here, I just started out with a squiggle. Now, if you want something more realistic, I did this bird. I have this space here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 separate areas, and then at least three different textures or patterns. So if you're doing something more realistic, it's going to be more like a texture showing how something feels. If you're doing something more abstract, it's going to be more of a pattern, so a repeated motif. So whatever that is, you decide. Then you're going to get your copper plate or your piece of copper tooling foil. You're going to put it underneath. So you're going to put it underneath. This might require you to kind of hold up your paper and make sure you get it exactly where it is going to go. And then you can use a pen or a pencil. You are going to just go over the main lines. So the main areas that define all of the edges of the spaces, do not go and copy over all the textures or patterns just yet. So once that is indented in there, you have a line, okay? The line is either popping up or down. And then you have to do the tooling process. So the tooling process is actually going to make large areas either be concave, so pushed down, or pushed up. So a single line is not enough of a tooling process. So you're going to grab a popsicle stick or a dowel rod, or I even have this tool here. So because I'm going to work with large areas that are bumping up or bumping down, I guess, I'm going to start with just on one side, and I'm going to have to do this kind of slowly. Underneath, I have my sketchbook. You could also use a magazine, but something that's going to kind of absorb the pressure of the tooling process. So if I want it, in this case, to bump down, and I'm going to have to come back and do this a couple times, actually. This is a wider area. Gonna get all the way next to the edges. Okay, now I'm also going to have areas, this is bumping down, that bump up. So I'm going to have to flip over so I can already see this area is bumped out. Now maybe I'm going to work in this area. So this is large areas that are being tooled. This is not my texture or my pattern. So I can work on this area. And you can start to see that becoming more three-dimensional. I'm going to come on this side. So this is the tooling process that is creating a relief or more of a three-dimensional surface. Once I have that area, or all of the areas, either pushed up or pushed down, Then I'm going to go back and add my textures or patterns. So if I look at this one, since this is like a mirror, here we go. So if I look at this area, I have put that zigzag line in there. So I actually want this to be pushed down just a little bit more. Kind of avoiding those creases. Trying to make this as flat as I can, even though it's bumped out, or as smooth as I can, because I want the pattern to be noticeable. So I can either flip it on this side and do the pattern, or I can kind of remain on this side. So since this is more of a line pattern, I'm going to use this tool. All right, so I can look at that from the side. The whole area is bumping out, and then that texture is coming out, and it's a pattern, but it is also now a texture because I can feel it. All right, so here is another example. The first step is those lines, but then I have to go and make areas either bump out or get pressed back in. So once I'm done with that, I am going to add a layer of black ink to make the lower areas kind of more noticeable. So I guess I'll practice on this one, even though this one's not finished. You're going to use India ink. This is permanent. And I will have stations set up around the room, but basically you're going to want to work with a paper towel underneath, and I am going to use this brush right here, and the idea is that I want the ink to go down into those lower areas and stick in there. And then I'm going to wipe it away from the raised areas. So it almost looks like it's creating like a little bit of a resist. Okay, this is permanent ink, so I need to make sure I wash that out right away. I'm going to take another towel and just kind of wipe it away from the raised areas. So once that is done, you will need to let it dry and attach it to a backing board. So the backing board is where you are going to extend your design off the edges. So I have here, I was working on the silver side. I have my dried black paint on there, or ink. If you want, if it didn't come off enough after it dries, you can take the steel wool and polish the upper areas a little bit more. Attach it to this backing board. Just use a hot glue gun, and then you are going to extend each one of the patterns or textures off the edges. So in here, I had the area that popped out as the swirl, and then I had this area out here. So I decided to keep the swirl white, and I am coloring around the swirl. And also inside this, I have a pattern of these dashed lines. So I used another color pencil. I used a darker red in order to shade those in. So when you're using your colored pencils, use good craftsmanship. Make sure that you are filling in all the areas, that you're not leaving a lot of pencil lines behind, so we can use our graphite techniques. And once you have that whole border finished, then you can fill out your artist statement and turn it in.